as a teenage boy, it would be really nice to like get, female attention. And apparently learning Metallica solos was not
What?
was
Really?
not super popular.
Oh, wait. That's how it's supposed to work, right? You get your electric guitar, you get in a band, and then the girls all flock you, right?
Yeah.
Did that not work?
No chicks came. There were no chicks that arrived. I mean, no one was more surprised than I.
Jonathan Stout is a band leader and guitarist specializing in pre-bebop jazz guitar. He leads 8 different bands, but you'll know him best from Jonathan Stout and his Campus 5 and the Jonathan Stout Orchestra, both of which he co-leads with Hilary Alexander. Beyond his own band, he also plays guitar with Michael Gamble and his Rhythm Serenades, Josh Palazzo's Candy Jacket Jazz Band, and his bands have been heralded as some of the world's premier swing dance bands. And as someone who's been lucky enough to have heard them live multiple times, I cannot agree more. Welcome to the stage, Mr. Jonathan Stout.
Hello, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for being here. This is so exciting.
Me too. I feel exactly the same way.
Could we start with a little bit of guitar? Because that is what you're enthusiastic about.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, here's a little bit of guitar. One of the people that I'm really enthusiastic about is a player named Alan Roos, who had this way of playing solos, but with chords. So instead of just like, he would play. And so he's one of my 2 big heroes, both of which played for Benny Goodman. We'll get to the other in a minute. Yeah, so here's just a little bit of I Can't Give You Anything But Love in that kind of style. So
Holy crap. Katie, how would you feel about canceling the interview and then Jonathan just plays for 20 minutes?
I mean, he does that on his porch on Facebook Live all the time.
Yes,
it's absolutely fabulous.
Yes. We'll link to that in the show notes for this episode, and you can check out way more of Jonathan Stout playing the guitar because it is amazing.
Thank you so much.
So I have to ask, why particularly jazz guitar and not other genres?
So I didn't start out playing jazz guitar. I started out playing rock guitar. I was born in 1981. I'm a 90s kid. So like I caught the tail end of heavy metal before grunge took over. And so I wanted to play rock guitar. And it was things like Metallica and Guns N' Roses, like the Black Album and Use Your Illusion 1 and 2 came out. And that was like a really big, that was the peak of heavy metal in 1991. And then Nirvana and Pearl Jam came out and it was like... By the way, for those not watching, I did a wave motion with my hand. My space work is... But so I got the tail end of this kind of very proficient music like Metallica, where you like had to learn to play guitar that was challenging. But what happened was in 1995, I went to this magnet school where we were bused from all over Los Angeles to be together with this very small cohort of kids. And we were all super nerdy and super awkward. Our Spanish teacher had arranged tango lessons one year. And the following year, she was kind of sick of tango. So we started taking swing dance lessons. And the instructor was one of the people that had started dressing in vintage clothing head to toe every day, going to the Derby here in Los Angeles. We started taking swing lessons and I just got so hooked. And part of it was as a teenage boy that really liked girls and thought it would be really nice to like get, female attention, having shoulder length page boy haircut that was all gross looking and wearing an industrial t-shirt. That wasn't doing it. And apparently learning Metallica solos was not was not super popular.
Oh, wait. That's how it's supposed to work, right? You get your electric guitar, you get in a band, and then the girls all flock you, right?
Yeah.
Did that not work?
No chicks came. There were no chicks that arrived. No chicks showed up. I know. I mean, no one was more surprised than I. But I started swing dancing, and swing dancing is a social framework by which there are rules of social interaction, and awkward people kind of have an excuse to like talk to people, to ask people to dance, to touch people in a not creepy way, and to be intimate in this kind of supervised way. And something about the music right away got me, something about the movement just got me, and I had never danced before. So dancing got me into jazz music, not just swing music, but also jazz broadly. And the music that I started listening to kind of outside of dancing was what we would call like mainstream straight ahead jazz. So Miles Davis Kind of Blue, Giant Steps by Coltrane, and that, Jazz 101. When I went to college in 1999, I got into a college for just academics that also happened to have a really good music program. And they had a jazz guitar program. And I was like, oh, that's cool. It's like double major. That'll be fun. Was not fun. Instrumental performance degrees are a real serious thing, and they are not fun. And so I had no aspirations of being a professional musician. And I just wanted to get my history degree and go to law school, which is also what happened. But yeah, it was kind of unfun. And so it's my interest in... Oh, go ahead.
Sorry. So I've seen Whiplash. Have you seen Whiplash, the movie? Is that what we're talking about here, or why was it not fun?
Okay, so I will say this about Whiplash. That was one of the worst things I've ever put myself through in the entire world, was watching that movie. There was no payoff. I was mad that I watched it, and I was on a plane, and I couldn't stop myself from finishing it, just hoping that there would be some redeeming value. I mean, no, that whole thing is like complete BS. And I went to USC, and one of the other things that really bummed me out about that program was the jazz guitarists were off in their own little cave where the rest of the jazz program was like really prestigious. The studio jazz guitar program was kind of like over here, and they're like, yeah, you go over there. Like, you weren't really fully accepted as part of the jazz people. The people who were in charge of it were like kind of smooth jazz, which is a thing I just don't understand and don't value. And yeah. Anyway, it was oddly really unfun. There were some skills I learned, but as it kind of killed my interest in guitar, and it really did, my interest in swing dancing kind of went the opposite direction. I met Nick Williams there like within the first week, and we started carpooling and going dancing together like 7 nights a week. And you could do that in LA at that time. There was that much swing dancing going on that 7 nights a week there was stuff. And so I basically stopped playing guitar at the end of that year. I quit and said, well, my entire identity up until this point had been being a guitar player, and now I'm going to be a swing dancer, and I'm not going to be a guitar player anymore.
That is the saddest thing, how formalized education can kill your enthusiasm for something if it's done wrong.
If it's done wrong. And it wasn't so much the formal education part of it, because I would have put in the work, but it was the soulless commercial quality of it, like that this was transactional, and that only after you were able to manage all that transactional stuff, then were you allowed to pursue something that had some, for lack of a better word, soul. But like a phoenix rising from the fire, I did the shape of a bird rising, just for anybody not watching the video.
And you did it beautifully.
No, so what happened was like I literally quit guitar, and like a month into my summer vacation after that year of college ends, I see this Woody Allen movie, Sweet and Lowdown, which featured Sean Penn as this fictional 1930s jazz guitar player. I was like, oh, I listen to swing music all the time. Maybe I should be playing swing guitar. And that actually leads me to a funny thing. You ask why jazz guitar? And so at this point, I don't really consider myself a jazz guitarist. I mean, I'm a jazz musician, but like I don't play any other kinds of jazz but swing, because like there's the swing era and the sort of bebop era, and there's like kind of this little bit of transitional overlap. And then like jazz just goes somewhere totally different. And because it's not something I believe in swing dancing to, or I enjoy swing dancing to, it's not of interest to me. And the aesthetic values of later jazz are really they're at cross purposes of swing music for dancing. That's why I have a career. as a dancer, like that just didn't feel right. Like Count Basie 1958 does not swing like 1938. And I'm not interested in 1958. I don't want to swing dance to Miles Davis. I don't want to swing dance to a lot of Oscar Peterson. It's like it's not what I like. I love Oscar Peterson. I think he's a musical genius, and I love some of his 40s work, which is like bonkers. But like, yeah, that later kind of jazz does not speak to me. If we're going to do the real thing, and that's still something that like deeply speaks to me, even though I know that like authenticity is a kind of impossibility, but it's still the kind of thing that drives me. Most people outside of that really have no frame of reference, and they're basically doing sort of a mediocre impression, and that impression runs very thin immediately, and then they just go back into like playing modern jazz, and it just sticks out like a sore thumb. So much of what I do is this negative reaction to people not doing it right. I'm not saying I do it right, but like I'm trying. That kind of Alan Roos playing that I just demonstrated, like, that's almost non-existent. Like there's a handful of people still doing that, and they're all friends of mine, and we all nerd out on that stuff. And like, so I'm playing an acoustic archtop guitar for you right now, and this is a guitar that's kind of built like a cello. It's got F holes, and the top is like carved and curved, and it's an acoustic guitar. There's no magnetic pickups on it. It's not electric. And 99.9% of jazz guitar players in the world, even if they're playing kind of older styles, just plug in and give up. And so like acoustic guitar for me is this really important tradition. And there's something about like the decay pattern of that guitar, of how long those notes ring, are just tied into the fact that it's an acoustic instrument, and it's going to ring as long as it rings, and then it'll decay. And like this style of music, it's 1930s house music. It's just the 1930s version of what ends up, the answer to your question that you asked 15 minutes ago, why jazz guitar, or at least why swing guitar, is because nobody else was doing it right, or not enough people are doing it right. We need that in a swing band. So if nobody else is going to do it, I'll do it. And I've had this one thing that's one of the things that drives me, which is if you're the only person doing something, you're automatically the best at it. And having started an actual swing band, like a small group swing band in the early 2000s, it's not like there were a million bands playing Benny Goodman sextet covers, especially for dancers in their original song lengths with original instruments and original feel. Within 2 years of founding the band, we were already starting to travel and play a lot of the big national events. We need people to do this, and we need people to honor the traditions of people like Alan Roos and Charlie Christian.
To your point of doing it right, I think the first time I heard the Campus 5 was at the Madrid Lindy Exchange, when they had the Battle of the Bands on the stage in a marble halled room. Alex, yeah. It was terrible. The sound quality in that room was like horrendous, because everything echoed off everything except for your band, because you guys are playing at a reasonable decibel level where you could actually hear all the instruments and not just everyone. Because it was a Battle of the Bands, everyone was so hyped to like play louder, to like win the battle. But you win the battle by playing well, not by playing loud, not in that room.
For me, so much of that quote unquote battle was like, I treat playing for swing dancers a lot like a DJ does, where I'm thinking about tempo and flow, and like it doesn't matter how high the trumpet can play if I haven't given you 3 great songs of social dance Lindy Hop back to back, because otherwise, why are we here? Swing dancers aren't here to see musical gymnastics.
What I can sense in your enthusiasm is that you're enthusiastic about the music, but you also feel like you're bringing something to the world here, something that other people are not bringing. There's a sense of responsibility that you contribute something that would otherwise be missing. And that could be a huge part of enthusiasm.
It's funny, like, we're talking about enthusiasm, but I feel like I'm equally motivated by spite and like my disappointment. But I think that's a good way to understand, like, so much of what the Campus 5 was initially and then evolved into very quickly was like learning from other people's mistakes, and like the things that I wasn't getting, the things that we wanted but weren't getting. And so I think there's a good way to sort of like turn even the things you don't like into a positive thing by like learning from them and not doing them, especially with Charlie Christian, like who somebody we'll talk about in a minute. But like there's a video of somebody playing on Charlie Christian's actual guitar. I mean, he had several, but this is the only one that we know was his. And they got the great jazz guitarist George Benson, like incredibly famous jazz guitar player George Benson. And they have him doing this tribute number to Charlie Christian. And so they start off playing 7 Come 11. And they play it, and then the solos start, and immediately they do the wrong chord changes and they turn it into a blues, even though that song's not a blues. It was like, wait a second. Is anybody like trying to do this? I was just so disappointed because this is the one chance that we have to really hear without having the medium of a 78 recording in between us, to hear this instrument played in its natural setting. And I was like, oh man, and they're not even playing the tune right. I just got to like chat with Norma Miller. How often do you get to talk to somebody that danced at the Savoy Ballroom, that their dance rehearsals were to the Chick Webb band rehearsing? And so I peppered her with all these questions. And at the end of it, I said, look, Norma, I'm the band leader tonight. You know, if I'm not doing it right, tell me. Okay. And if you think it's okay, you let me know. And so we went into flying home, and Albert's going to town. Albert Alvar, sax player, is going to town on flying home. And she's sitting back holding court at the back of the ballroom. I see her get up, and she like waddles away. She waddles all the way around the back. And then she walks up right in front of me and just gives me this thumbs up, like, yep. And then waddles back. And I was like, you know, she didn't have to do that. She could have gave me a thumbs up from the back of the ballroom, but she like did this thing. And I was like, all right. So like the tradition and the legacies of these people are like so important, because when I started swing dancing, they were essentially forgotten. I grew up in Los Angeles. I wouldn't have known they existed. And so
you realize you're talking to somebody from Hong Kong and Denmark. Like, we had no idea either.
I mean, if my US centrism isn't already showing, ta-da! Like Charlie Christian is not like revered for like the swinging, riffy, rhythmic stuff he played. On an AABA song, like say 7 Come 11 or Flying Home, he would play really rhythmic, riffy, kind of blues-based stuff on the A sections. And then on the bridge, that's when he would start kind of playing more linear bebop-y strings of notes. So like it might be something like like that's what the kind of stuff that he would play on the A section. But when the bridge comes, like you could hear that transition between the but you know, like those kind of modern musicians, they only care about the bridge. The part where he's like they're like, yeah, that's tragically behind the times. So like, yeah, like it's all about legacy, and it's all about, you know, making these people's stories known and valuing them on their own terms for what they were and not what they led the way to, you know?
I think that combination of enthusiasm for a thing and then spite for the people who do it wrong, I kind of feel like we should coin like spite enthusiasm or something. And one does not exclude the other, I would say. You can be passionately for something while being passionately against the people doing it wrong, and those two can go well together. Just the spite thing alone would be sad and pathetic.
Quickly, I did in my notes say if he doesn't mention Charlie Christian, we've done something wrong. And I feel like you've mentioned at least 15 times.
Well, no, real quick, can I just tag that spite thing?
Yes.
Well, you know, and when you say pathetic, I mean, I think you're right, because there is a way that negativity can get to you. And even in the midst of enthusiasm, when the negativity overtakes you, it can really crush your ability to be inspired and to be motivated. During this pandemic, like, especially when it first started, I was like, okay, I'm going to be motivated. I'm going to practice. And then I saw a couple guitar players that I respect doing stuff, and it basically like killed me. It was like so good. And I was like, well, screw it. I give up. It's just no point. I'll just stop. And And I've had to really battle back with that. And especially the hopelessness that comes with like kind of this unending lockdown. That's a real hard challenge. And so, I'm glad that I've been able to learn the lessons from people who've made what I think of as mistakes to make the thing that I love. But, if that enthusiasm doesn't overtake the negativity, then it remains pathetic.
Yeah. That is some
Yes.
relatable content right there. This idea of seeing somebody else doing like even just the same as you, but the fact that you're not doing anything, you're like, okay, I'm trash. Excellent. I'm going to go sit in a corner and cry and never dance again because I'm terrible.
Oh my God,
Yeah.
that's everyone's stories. And by the way, we got to play a few dances, vaccinated only. Oh, thank you, United States, for having provided vaccine for so many of our people, even if so many of our idiot people don't take it. And it was funny because, boy, people are out of shape. And the tempos really need to like really fit that. So it's not just you, it's everybody.
Okay.
And by you, I mean the communal you, because we're all out of shape.
But I also am very out of shape. I've started dance training again, but yeah, I've forgotten how to train. I've forgotten how to survive a 2-hour session. It's terrible. Anyways, my physical fitness aside, you have an incredible collection of vintage guitars. I remember looking after 2 of them in my flat in Madrid.
Yes.
Is this one you're playing right now? Is this your current go-to? What is your iconic guitar and what's your most unusual guitar?
Well, this is my 1932 Gibson L5 that I'm playing for you first. This is the 4th vintage guitar that I bought. I sold number 2 and number 3. So it's not like I amassed like 10 vintage guitars all of a sudden. But this is, I guess, my desert island, like forever guitar. This is the guitar I played when in the hospital room when my son was born. Like, this is a really inspiring guitar. This is is just super tuneful and resonant and just wonderful. But it's actually not the guitar that I play the most. And the guitar that I play the most is this one, which is a 1939 Gibson L5. And this is the guitar that I spend 90% of every gig playing. And it's the same model. It's just 7 years later. They made it bigger. They made it longer by an inch this way and 3/4 inch this way. It doesn't seem like it'd be that much, but like the sheer volume out of this thing is like really amazing. In 1924 is when this model of guitar was introduced, the first kind of archtop guitar. Jazz guitar was barely a thing. And jazz banjo was like the thing. But in 1932, it was still sort of a novelty that the guitar was taking over, and the guitar had not fully evolved to perfectly play rhythm guitar in a swing band. By 1939, they nailed it. And that's what this guitar is. And so, like, I can play. And like, even unamplified, you can really hear and feel that. This is the workhorse, but it's a little harder to play. The fact that it's longer means the strings are incrementally tighter and it's just a little bit more of a fight. And so like I have to work a little bit harder and I can't be quite as like light with it. I have to kind of play with more force. If I'm only playing a rhythm guitar, if I'm only playing acoustic guitar, this is what I bring. If I need to be heard, this is what I bring. And this is basically exactly the same model in the same color that Alan Roos played starting in 1938. So it's ostensibly on every one of his great recordings after he left the Goodman Band. And at Carnegie Hall, he played the guitar just like this, but with a different color.
Wow.
But that's just the acoustic side of things. On the electric side, this is a 1937 Gibson Es150. This is the same model of guitar that Charlie Christian played until the middle of 1940. It really like it has that timbre even unplugged.
Yeah.
And this was actually the first vintage guitar that I got. And I found one of these at a store on my lunch break from being a lawyer. And I had been a lawyer long enough that we were starting to like actually have like a surplus in our lives and think about moving and growing and starting a family and stuff. I saw this on the wall, and it was for like the closest reasonable price that I've seen in a long time. And it was like, yeah, I kind of have to do this. And it's funny because a poor workman blames his tools. That's like an axiom. But the flip side of that is that, yeah, but it's really easier to do your job right if you have the right tool. Again, it's all about legacy. Like, I feel like the custodian of this instrument and the life that this has had. And I know that this left the factory on August 12th, 1937. I know that because there's people that have the Gibson shipping ledgers, and I was able to
It's
find
this
out.
guitar's birthday. Today is August 12th.
Oh my gosh, that's so funny.
Dear Lord.
Wow. Holy crap. That's so cool.
We are recording this on August. I cannot believe that. That's amazing.
So this guitar was, ostensibly born in 1937. I mean, it was probably assembled and sitting on a shelf for a while until they fulfilled the order. But yeah, I mean, it's the closest thing to its birthday. And I feel like the custodian of it. And the same thing, like I don't know what lives this guitar led, this 1932. But I mean, like, it's in great shape. It's in amazing condition, and it sounds wonderful.
Is there like a white whale for you, like a guitar that's somewhere out there, and if only you could find it?
Well, yeah. There's Alan Roos's personal blonde Gibson L5, which exists and is out there, and his name is like on the tailpiece. Alan Roos is like barely a historical footnote. I mean, like, there's no biography. I mean, you're lucky if there's like 6 paragraphs written about him at once in any book anywhere in the world. But so Alan Roos's personal guitar that he got in February 1938, that exists, and it's out there, and there are pictures of it, and I have an idea.
Owns it should probably watch it really closely. I can tell.
Well, I mean, at the end of the day, it's owned by somebody that probably cares way less about Alan Roos and just thinks it's a neat thing. And I think it's really important. And if I have the opportunity to get it, I will find a way to make that happen. And there's Charlie Christian's real guitar, which is owned by a guy named Lynn Wheelwright, who's a really important historian and guitar keyologist. So I don't think I coined that term. A good friend of mine is this guy, Deke Dickerson, who the history of the electric guitar is like, he knows it backwards and forwards. So I think I stole that from him. Charlie Christian was a young black guitar player who was living in Oklahoma City, and he had kind of really picked up this newfangled electric guitar and was able to use the way that it sounds different from an acoustic guitar to kind of play like more like a tenor saxophone player, like Lester Young, one of his biggest influences. Charlie Christian basically gets scouted by producer John Hammond, who is famous for discovering Billie Holiday, Count Basie, Bruce Springsteen, Bob Dylan. I mean, like, a really amazing career. Basically, Hammond hears this guy over the radio broadcasting from Oklahoma City, puts him on a train out to meet Benny Goodman, who's playing in Los Angeles. And the story goes that basically Benny doesn't give him any notice, so they sneak him on stage later that night. Benny's not happy about this, but like calls a tune thinking that Charlie wouldn't know it. He calls Rose Room, and Charlie plays what they say 27 choruses or something. Like, I don't think that actually happened, but needless to say, that kind of catalytic moment was a lightning rod for Goodman. There's a website called soloflight.cc, and it's a Charlie Christian website. And on there is a calendar of 1939 through Charlie's incredibly short career, and when he dies in early 1942 from tuberculosis. And he only records till the middle of 1941. So we're talking about not even a 2-year career. And it basically like legitimized electric guitar in a way that it had not been previously. Yeah, so Charlie is like deeply responsible for that. What a uniquely important person for a swing dancer. Like, he has shaped my life. Like, Six Appeal. Like, How many times have you danced to that tune? We all dance to that tune. If you're a swing dancer, you've heard. It's just, he's the cat. And the fact that he has this incredibly short career, that he gets tuberculosis, and that he dies in a segregated hospital, like, that's an important object lesson in the fact, the history of racism and the things that we have to like deal with if we're going to enjoy this music, because it's part of the context that you can't ignore. Like that guitar. And that's actually at a museum in Arizona. And I know people have gotten to play it and they've had people come and play it. And that's definitely a wish that I would have when it comes to White Whale. Like, what I wouldn't kill to do a show with that guitar. Like, would that not be the thing?
That would be the
I
thing.
mean, come on.
All right, what do we have to do to make that happen? Like, who do we gotta, like, there's gotta be a petition on change.org. Come on, we gotta make this happen.
I mean, it's at the Museum of Musical Instruments in Arizona. And, I hope that someday, that'll happen. So.
All right.
I've never seen you play live, Jonathan. I'm so sorry. But I saw this video of you playing at Lindy Shock in 2018. And there's this video of you playing Flying Home. And people are at a swing dance festival to dance. They stop dancing and everybody's like singing along and jumping up and clapping. It's amazing. I can only imagine what that must feel like to play. But you don't get to do that unless you practice. How do you find enthusiasm for practicing, for sitting down and actually getting better at your craft?
Well, it's funny. My best friend was a guitar player also, but he stopped because he didn't really want to do the things you have to do to get better. And he wanted to be better, and he realized he didn't enjoy practicing, essentially. He liked playing guitar, and he was happy to like learn a song, but to him, practicing the nuts and bolts of music was just not fun, and he sort of gave it up. I've come to realize later in life that I have ADHD, and that is a gift and a curse. And so for all of my distraction or problems with executive dysfunction, I also have the ability to hyperfocus and to multitask. So, as a kid, I would just be like, while watching TV, and so like, I was always blessed essentially with that thing. And it wasn't until literally 6 months ago that I realized like, oh, this is a medical condition that has a name, and all of these personal failings of mine of like forgetting to answer emails and not following up and having a real hard time doing tasks that I can't imagine what I have to do. I can't do them. Yeah. So like for me, like practicing, like at least the nuts and bolts, the coping mechanism that I discovered long ago, not realizing that's what it was multitasking. And I do any number of things with a TV show on or a radio show on, because that is the only way I can keep from being so bored that I get up. Now, there are ways in which you can't focus as deeply because of that. But when you're talking muscle memory stuff, there's a lot to that.
So if somebody wanted to get into playing swing guitar, how or where should they start?
I'd say just start taking guitar lessons. I went to a neighborhood guitar teacher who literally changed my life, a guy named Mike Schmidt here in Los Angeles in the San Fernando Valley. And, that guy changed my life. And I tell him that every time I get the opportunity. And, it's really amazing. But you just take lessons. And then if you want to learn to play swing music, the thing you have to do is really listen to it. And the lesson that I will kind of give you from my own mistakes is transcribe. Find a way to learn note for note the things that your heroes are playing, because you're having to speak in an accent that is not naturally your own. You are not from the 1930s. You have heard bebop. You have heard modern jazz. And if you're going to, a lot of this is like a film to me. Like if you're going to tell the story of Braveheart, I don't know, maybe don't have a wristwatch in frame. Like if you see that wristwatch, it takes you out of it. And it's like, and especially like, I think about accents, because what I'm asking somebody to do is not just read notes on a page. Like that's a little bit of it. They do have to read the notes in the right accent, which is actually harder than it sounds. But then for every solo, they have to not just, read the notes. They have to improvise in character in a way that's true to the music, true to the era, true to their instrument, and doesn't take you out of it. And that's where almost every modern jazz musician falls short, because they haven't done the listening, they haven't done the transcription, they don't have the vocabulary. So I would say if you want to learn to play swing guitar, like you have to transcribe. And there are a million websites and stuff with transcriptions that are already out there, but you kind of have to already know how to play guitar at least a little bit. and then just start trying to transcribe people like Charlie Christian and Alan Russo.
So thank you so much for your time. It's been a delight. Where can we find you on the internet, and where can people listen to your music?
So campus5.com, that's with an F-I-V-E, always spelled out. Bandcamp is the best place to buy our music. So campus5.bandcamp.com or jonathanstout.bandcamp.com for my solo guitar stuff. And then I on Facebook Live on Jonathan Stout come a swing guitar page. I do occasional things where I'll pop out on my porch and do like a live cast of solo guitar. But the thing that I've been doing the most recently is on Instagram at campus5. Again, F-I-V-E, no numbers, never numbers.
Yeah.
Anyway, but on Instagram at campus5, I'm doing this thing on Instagram where every day I play a chorus of the same song. So every week I pick a new song, and then I play 5 different choruses of that song in a slightly different style. And I force myself to not play the same thing from the previous day. And by the 5th day, that's real hard. But that's actually been like my latest practicing enthusiasm challenge. So this is good. It kind of forces me to do a different thing every week and every day.
Wonderful. Can you play us out, Jonathan?
Yes.
In this episode's Moment of Meta, we want to talk about the 4th rule of enthusiasm, or the 4th, Katie?
Enthusiasment.
Yes, very good.
I feel like you're really not letting me have my protests on this word.
No. I'm overriding you on this one. Commandments of enthusiasm, those are the enthusiasments. It's a thing now. Deal with it. Enthusiasm number 4 is be real or don't be fake. Either way you want to phrase it. And here's why. As I see it, enthusiasm is at its core emotional. Enthusiasm in itself might not be an emotion, but it's certainly a mix of emotions like joy, excitement, hope, interest, and curiosity. And you never want to fake emotions. It turns out that whenever you fake emotions, that's actually bad for you. And you can end up hurting your ability to feel that same emotion in the future. You can end up disconnecting yourself from your emotions. Katie, have you ever been in a situation where you felt you had to fake an emotion, and how did that feel?
Yeah, I think probably when I was still living in Italy, I was always surrounded by Italian people and there was no other foreigners.
Yeah.
And there was a couple of cases because I think the group of people I hang out with, they're not used to hanging out with people who were not Italian. There were moments where like there was some cultural insensitivities or just not speaking English where I felt very isolated and I felt very alone, but I couldn't like show that all the time because often I was like seen as like the teacher, or I was seen as somebody who's part of the community. And so if I was just like sitting in the corner being the sad little weirdo that I felt like I was, it would have probably not looked so good.
Yeah.
And so I felt the social pressure to look like I was having a good time and that I was enjoying myself when maybe I wasn't necessarily feeling so good.
And how did that affect you, would you say?
It's made me have very conflicted feelings about my time in Italy. And it's also made me, to be honest, really appreciative of Hong Kong and really appreciative of how multicultural it is here and how I'm never the only foreigner here. But yeah, it's shitty when you have to pretend to be something that you're not.
Yes, that is exactly the point. When you have to fake an emotional state that you just don't have right now, that's bad. And I think it's especially bad when you have to fake positive emotions. It's very rare that we ask people to fake negative emotions, right?
Be sadder.
But
Come on, Alex.
exactly. I want you to be more angry right now. Very, very often there's social pressure on us to suppress negative emotions and fake positive emotions. I think we do that to children all the time. That we praise children when they're happy and playful and joyful, and we sort of either shun them or we try to modify their emotional expression whenever they're expressing sadness or anger or frustration. And I think that's a mistake, and again can disconnect people from their actual emotional life. That's why you should never fake enthusiasm, because enthusiasm is fantastic, but if you fake it again and again and again, you could actually, according to the research, end up hurting your ability to experience enthusiasm and feel it in a genuine way.
Particularly when you talk about children, it's a very gendered way we look at it. Like little boys in particular, or people who express a male gender identity are often told they're not allowed to cry, they're not allowed to be sad, man up, don't cry. And I think this has a really strange knock-on effect where anger is not seen as an emotion allowed, or sadness is not seen as an emotion allowed to men. And so I think there's a lot of gender politics involved in this idea of not allowing yourself to experience certain emotions.
Yes, that's definitely going on.
So basically gender constructs and how we force it on people is like kind of bad or something. That's so weird. What?
Yeah, it's not optimal right now, I don't think, maybe.
Yeah. Oh man. Crazy to think that like the way we force people to act a certain way based on their genitals is a bad concept. So weird.
Yeah. What if we could just let people be themselves, huh?
No, not allowed.
Yeah.
Obviously not. Wear blue and I wear pink, obviously.
Yeah, I just want to mention one fascinating example of this from the research is from the American sociologist called Ali Hochschild. I actually met her once. She is amazing. And in her book, The Managed Heart, she looks at something she calls emotional labor. And this is work that requires you to put on a certain emotional display. Specifically in the book, she looks at flight attendants, right? And as a flight attendant, you may be having the crappiest day ever, but you're not allowed to show that in any way. Quite the contrary, as a flight attendant, you have to be, tea or coffee, anything else, what can I get you? You have to put on this facade of positive emotions. And in her book, she documents the bad effects of this. And there's a quote that I'd like to read that goes, "Just as we have seldom recognized or understood emotional labor, we have not appreciated its cost to those who do it for a living. Like a physical laborer who becomes estranged from what he or she makes, an emotional laborer, such as a flight attendant, can become estranged not only from her own expressions of feeling, her smile is not her smile, but also from what she actually feels, her managed friendliness. This estrangement, though a valuable defense against stress, is also an important occupational hazard because it is through our feelings that we are connected with those around us."
Oof.
Yeah.
When I was doing a lot of weekenders and stuff, when I was a dance teacher who got to travel, there's definitely that feeling like at a social, if I'm not in a mood, like it's better for me just not to be there. Because if I'm not in the right energy, the right mindset, and I'm in the room, people are going to have an expectation that you're going to be super friendly, super excited to dance with everybody, and like really happy to be there. But if this is like my third weekender in a row, maybe I'm not that energy. And I remember my favorite event organizer in the whole wide world. I had 10 weekend events booked in a row one time. And on the 10th event, it was a lot. The event organizer basically turned around to me and said, after the workshops, she asked me if I'd like to go to the social that night, or I can go to the movies with her and her boyfriend and have a quiet night sitting in the dark. And I was so thankful for her for giving me that choice. And I was so grateful that she gave me that option. I took the movie. It was a great night. We had popcorn. We watched a movie. I got to sit quietly and no one asked me any questions.
Nice.
And so, I definitely relate to that idea sometimes where you feel like you have to put on a smile. You have to be really friendly. You have to be really bubbly because you're working an event or you're working at a festival. But not a problem anymore because there are no festivals.
So the point here is be enthusiastic, but don't fake it. Because if you fake enthusiasm over time, you can actually hurt your ability to experience genuine enthusiasm, and that would be bad.
All right, noted. If I'm not feeling it, I won't go to socials.
That's a good choice. So that was your moment of meta.
We hope you enjoyed sharing some of our enthusiasms in this episode. Please visit our website, electricenthusiasm.com, or find us on Instagram at electricenthusiasm to discover more episodes or to leave a comment.
And now, dear listener, go swing.
It does sound like a sports catchphrase or something. I like it.